Hello, everyone who's joining. Welcome.
Hello, thank you.
Happy to see everyone here. We're really excited to share this opportunity with everyone. So while we're waiting for everyone else to join, feel free to click on the Menti or go to menti.com and click in the code or use the QR code. We'd just love to hear from you why climate action is important to you. And it's definitely important to us. And I know that everybody in this community is here for that reason. So thank you for being here. So just give a couple minutes for everybody to get here. Feel free to write your name in the chat and where you're calling in from. Our team from 2811 is based I'm in Minneapolis, and the rest of our US team is in New York and Chicago. We have a team member from Colombia here, and we also have team members in other parts of the world as well. So welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. Feel free to drop a line in the chat box and to fill in the Menti survey. So today's call is a chance for us to hear from teachers who have participated in the 2811 Climate Action Academy, who developed lesson plans in the academy and are applying what they've learned in their classrooms. So we're going to be hearing from 2 teachers from the US and 2 teachers from Colombia who have participated in our program. And we'll also hear from a student. It's very important for us to always center the youth in this program and what their needs are. So we look forward to hearing from a student that's part of the Illinois Youth Climate Movement on her experience also with learning about climate change in high school. So I see that we have quite a few people who have joined. I think for the sake of time, because this is a 1-hour call, I think it's best if we get started, and we'll look at the Menti results at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Victor, who I met while we were students at McGill University. Victor has a lot of experience starting as a student at McGill, working for climate action, and he's a scientist, he's an educator, and he's part of our team. So take it away, Victor.
Thanks, Katie, and thank you everybody for joining us. I think it's important to center what we're doing to advance climate justice by focusing primarily on the role of the youth in inspiring and catalyzing the climate justice movement in the past couple of years. If we look at this slide, on the right-hand panel, we see just in a couple of days when we first did the first module, the first cohort of the Climate Action Academy, we were just appalled by the reality that we're already living in, that the climate crisis is already upon us. We see wildfires in California, blazing the sun red with the smoke, but also at the same time, Sudan is being hit with an entire year's worth of rainfall just in one day, added to the record-shattering storm season in the East Coast. The reality of the climate crisis is here, and the youth are pivotal in advancing the climate justice movement in the US and around the world. As we see in the bottom headlines, Italy's students have demanded climate change education and sustainability education, and Italy became the first country in the world to mandate climate change and sustainability education K through 12. But we also see that young people are demanding that climate change and sustainability be integrated into their education in other parts of the world as well. We see other headlines. New Jersey, for example, became the first state in the United States to mandate climate change education in their schools, but we also see youth in California and in Germany and all around the world demanding that climate change be taught because students are responding to the crisis. And we need to understand that schools and our education are central not only in advancing our public understanding of the climate crisis, but also can be focal centers and points of articulation for action to advance our resilience and our adaptation to rapidly changing environments. This is really a response to intersecting crises that our entire civilization, our planet is living in. And while we reflect on the climate change crisis, on the biodiversity crisis, on the COVID crisis, on racial injustice, all these crises, you know, there's a common theme that we are all in this together, that we're all in the same storm, but it's important to recognize that we're not all on the same boat. This panel here on the left shows, you know, how in a commotion and in the turbulence that we're living in, some people may be okay to weather this storm while others are not. And we see that also in the panel on the right-hand side, where we see that people and living in privilege that are disproportionately responsible for the climate crisis are not the people that are being disproportionately affected by these crises. And we see these intersection on health inequity, racial inequity, environmental inequity, all intersecting, and the youth is responding to these intersecting crises and demanding not only that environmental justice and social justice be integrated into their curricula, but also advancing the role that schools and communities that are schools can play in advancing social and environmental justice moving forward. So we hope that in this program that we've developed, that we can help to respond to this demand that students are demanding of their teachers and administrators to address the climate crisis. But we're here to help teachers be more prepared to teach climate change and sustainability, and to innovate ways in which schools can be agents of change in their communities in the United States, across North America, South America, and around the world. Thank you very much. Katie, back to you.
Thanks, Victor. So it's important for us to focus on action and on solutions, because sometimes we can get a little bit bogged down with all of the bad news that we hear about with regards to the environment. So we are a community, we're called 2811. We are a global community, a platform for social change, and we support universities and schools for regenerative development through the installation of capacities in social innovation, entrepreneurship, impact investing, and climate action. And we have a team here in the US, and we also have teams in Chile and Colombia, Germany, and Spain. And we're in the process of forming 2811 in Portugal and Brazil as well. So I'd like to share a short video so you can see a bit what our global programs have looked like before we start hearing from our presenters. Okay, I hope this video gave you a little idea of what 2811 is all about. These are some of the projects and activities that we've had in the last couple of years, starting with the first in-person Climate Action Academy in Chile in 2019, and summer camps with youth in Panama and Germany in 2019, 2020, the launch of the climate labs working with universities to accelerate climate innovation in Colombia in 2020, and the climate action academies that we've hosted online in Colombia and Chile in 2020 and in the US in 2021. So for those who don't know what the Climate Action Academy is, it's a 4-week online training that focuses on delivering knowledge and resources to teachers about the climate crises and how to bring this knowledge into the classroom in a way that inspires students to become activists and to become innovators for the movement for climate action. So the certification requires about 10 hours of participation over the course of 4 weeks. We are now accepting participants for the next cohort, which starts in March. And I think one of my colleagues will put the link to that in the chat. And the last cohort that we had that just ended a couple weeks ago resulted in a book that's full of lesson plans. And we're going to hear from a couple of teachers who were part of that cohort. So knowledge about the climate crisis from different perspectives, connections with other teachers, not only in the US, but around the world, and resources that can be used in the classroom and in schools in general. So without further ado, I'd like to pass it off to our first presenter, who is Gina Woodard, a science teacher from California who participated in the last academy.
Hi, thanks, Katie. So nice to be here with everyone. I'm actually excited because now my next step in this, I would love to form partnerships with, I have family from Brazil and from Mexico, and I would love to form partnerships with other groups that are joining the Climate Action Academy. I found out about this actually pretty late, and I signed up right away as soon as I found out, even though it wasn't the most convenient for my schedule, and I'm so glad that I did. So my name is Gina. I'm going to show you just real briefly about a few things. Let me minimize this. For some reason, my infographic is showing up really small on the other. So I just wanted to briefly go over my climate story. I'm a high school teacher in Chula, Vista, which is like we're right across the border from Tijuana. And so, but I grew up in Los Angeles. I grew up in the midst of an oil-addicted city. I grew up in the harbor area. My grandfather, I never got a chance to meet him. He was an immigrant from Guadalajara, Mexico, and he actually had a heart attack in the oil refinery. And it was always a really sore point for my father because our apartment overlooked the refinery where he died. And so I grew up seeing oil, we called them oil horses, and really being concerned at a very young age. I also lived right by the beach. I'm an avid beach goer. I was a lifeguard when I was growing up, and seeing a lot of the impacts that people don't realize that happened within the oceans, and how the ocean absorbs so much of that heat energy, and some of the ecosystem impacts. So I got very involved with a few nonprofit groups. And what motivates me so much is I have the most wonderful group of students. I have an environmental justice and sustainability club. I teach biology and AP environmental science. And my students, I have several students that are interns and fellows with the nonprofit San Diego 350 working on climate change. Those are my students in the yellow shirts right there. And they've been working, actually, a lot of times, when I get students from the time they're 9th grade and they're in my biology class and they get to have me later on, hopefully, they've been very involved in a lot of work. And I wanted to just kind of show a little bit. My students are very involved in the Youth for Climate movement, which they have in different cities. Ours is sponsored by our 350 group. I also attended the Al Gore's climate reality training, and I'm working with a group of youth from that as well. We work with, I'm going to show real quickly. My big passion is engaging students in climate activism. So the way that I've done that in my community is we collaborate with our city's Sustainability Commission and Climate Change Working Group. We have a fantastic city that actually is, the city of Chula Vista is making strides to becoming a more sustainable city. They actually got their first certification. My students got to participate in the Climate Equity Index. They learned about environmental justice, public health access and equity. They contributed to environmental and policy work that's actually on our city's website. So that gave them a sense of like that they were actually contributing to something significant. We work with a lot of local nonprofits and NGOs. And my students, and it actually, besides just the aspect of feeling like they are engaged in activism work, they also qualify for a lot of scholarships and service awards. They can get a diploma certificate for their involvement. So that's a little bit extra motivation for them. And then I just wanted to share a little bit about in our city. I don't know how many other cities have this. We have a climate action challenge in Chula Vista where people can select actions and see how much it can save their family to take care. In some of these actions don't involve any money, any cost. So my students have been involved in the climate action challenge. And another organization that we're working with is the South Bay Sustainable Communities nonprofit. And my students are doing a food waste recovery program at school and doing food waste composting. We're doing water bottle filling stations that we have grant funded that we're putting into the schools. And they're working right now. Their next initiative is on reducing single-use plastics in schools, which is a challenge for us and definitely in the high schools in the United States in general. So just kind of to close, I wanted to share a little bit on my curriculum. I focused on a climate solutions project, PSA public service announcement for climate change, and really had the students develop ways that they could implement programs to combat climate change. If anybody is interested, I can share resources. My students they looked at the effects and impacts of climate change, and they had some research posts that they've done. And so it's just been something where it's been really rewarding to see their level of involvement. So thank you so much. And I'm so grateful to the Climate Action Academy because you can't believe the number of resources you'll get from them. I've attended so many trainings and by far this was like amazing, the resources. So I'm grateful. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Gina. We loved having you in the course, and you are definitely a source of inspiration for how schools can really be agents of change. And that's awesome. So thank you so much for sharing. Our next speaker is Daniel, a math teacher from Northern California.
That's right. Yes. Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. My name's Dan. And yes, I live in Northern California. I'm in Santa Rosa, which is about 1 hour north of San Francisco. Just a little bit about my background in climate change, always having heard about it, kind of in the news, a slight level of concern, but then when the fires started hitting real heavily here in California, it really hit home. And Santa Rosa and Sonoma County was heavily affected starting about 4 years ago. And now it's just kind of an annual thing. So everybody's trying to do what they can. And so as a math teacher, I asked myself, well, what can I do to try and, talk to my students about climate change and really bring it to the forefront? So what I'm going to do is share my screen and basically show you how I have been incorporating climate change, just little tidbits of information into my lesson plans in the form of word problems or like applications of the topic we might be learning at any particular time. So just to get more specific, I teach Algebra 1, Geometry, and Calculus. I'm at a high school level here. And I just, for the final project for the Climate Action Academy, I made just 6 examples of word problems or applications that one might use in these 3 classes. So I'll go through them. I'm not going to go too much into the weeds, but I'm happy to troubleshoot with anybody later if you want to talk more. So for Algebra 1, one of the examples was there's a carbon footprint calculator that we get pointed to in the Climate Action Academy. And one thing it tells you is it tells you how many Earths your lifestyle would take how many Earths it would take to sustain your lifestyle, right? So you might get something like, 2.3 Earths or something like that to tell you how many Earths it would take to sustain your lifestyle. And it also tells you how many global hectares that translates to, right? So I don't know, maybe it's like 150 hectares or something like that. But then, it begs the question is like, well, how many Earths would it take, or how many hectares would it take to live on one Earth? But it doesn't really answer this. So this is a perfect proportion problem where, you have one number to 2.3 to 1 Earth, and then is equal to 150 to X, and then you can go ahead and solve this. So this is one of the Algebra 1 examples. Again, this is getting a little bit into the weeds, so I apologize if this is bringing up old math stuff that people are, kind of not super, it's a little rusty maybe. But this one's really good as well. This is another Algebra 1 one, and this is some statistics taken from this article that Bill McKibben wrote. It's called The Terrifying New Math, and it's from an article he wrote in the Rolling Stones in 2012. And basically, it's a little blurry here, but basically said in the Paris Climate Accord, they said that we need to keep below 2 degrees Celsius, right? And they also said that the amount of carbon that we are allowed to burn to keep below this 2 degrees Celsius is about 565 gigatons of carbon in the form of coal or gas or oil. But it also says that the fossil fuel industry has about 2,795 gigatons worth of carbon in its reserves. Even if it hasn't used them, it has this much capacity. And so what you might do in your Algebra 1 class is draw some inequalities with this. And, so we need to keep things less than or equal to 2 degrees Celsius. And that means burning less than or equal to 565 gigatons of carbon. But the fossil fuel industry has 2,795 gigatons. So not only are you hitting the lesson that you're trying to achieve, but it brings home to the students the situation at hand. I will keep going. So those are some Algebra 1 applications. A quick geometry one. I won't go into this too much, but this one is more about, in geometry, you might have to, one of the topics at our school we teach is they have to find the area of sectors of a circle. So it's kind of like a pizza slice of a circle. And then we talk about diets, right? Like how much of your diet is vegetables and how much of it is processed foods and other things like that. And so basically we're going to talk about the standard American diet versus what the USDA, the United States, suggests what a standard diet is. But then we talk about more what a climate friendly diet would be. And basically it's, increasing this sector of the vegetables on your plate, right? So trying to hit this idea of eating for climate change and tying it into geometry. The last couple ideas here are more calculus based. So one of them is just simply to get vocabulary across with regard to calculus. And one of those things is that we need to learn words like inflection points and critical points and concavity. And so basically this graph right here is the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere over time. And so what is happening right at the moment is that the amount of carbon dioxide is going up, but not only is it going up, but it's going up at an increasing rate. And so we can talk about that as being concave up, and we need to basically hit an inflection point where it's maybe still going up, but the rate at which it's going up, it's starting to slow down until we hit a critical point, which is the peak, and then it would start to drop. So this is a hopeful scenario that that we hope to achieve, but it also gives across this calculus vocabulary that we would need to teach. And just a couple other ones. Again, I'm talking about this idea of how much carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere over time. This is a graph of that all the way back to the 1800s until the present. And you can find the average rate of change of how much carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere by finding the slope of this line that goes through these 2 points. And we find that the slope tends to be about 1.6 parts per million of carbon dioxide per year. So this is real easy, and this is about average rates of change. And then the last one, and this is definitely my favorite, and I'm just gonna kind of like unabashedly just nerd out on this. I really like this one. This third application is this. It's again the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere over time. And this right here is the Keeling curve, right? So it's the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere over time that this scientist, Dr. Keeling, found, or he recorded over time. And you can model this information with an equation, right? And you can also have a great discussion about how it's sinusoidal in nature over the seasons, but it's also going up kind of like a parabola, like it's quadratic in general. So you can graph this with this like gnarly looking equation over here, right? And what you can do with this though, is you could simplify this equation. This one takes into account all the little variations going up and down and up and down. But then if you want to simplify it, this is just the quadratic piece right here. And it just talks about it going up and up and up. And if you do that, then you can take the derivative of this function at certain points in time and find the instantaneous rate of change, or basically how fast it's going up at any moment in time, where these are years after a certain time period, which I think was like 1982. So this would be 1982 right here, this would be in 2020, and this would be in 2050. And these tell you how fast the carbon dioxide is going up by taking the derivative of this function. So okay, unbelievably nerdy, and I know that I should probably stop, but if you ever want to get more into the weeds with this, I love talking about it. I'm gonna put my email in the chat. And yeah, so just in general, infusing the math curriculum with examples like this. And the last thing I'll just say is that it's really important, I think, to not only teach this stuff, but after showing this kind of like pretty heavy information, to give students opportunities for what they can do to take action. Because like I already presented some of these, and some of the students were like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna go home and like cry. But I'm like, no, now you should go join the club we have at school, or you should go join this thing in the city that's, taking action in this way. So giving opportunities along with the information. But okay, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. This was so informative for me as well, because it's sometimes hard to get a handle on all these numbers, and I think it's so important for kids to be learning about real life applications of math too, things that are really applicable to their lives. And I love that you brought in Project Drawdown, because I think they have amazing data, and the way that they show the way that we need to draw down emissions is also very action and solutions oriented. So thank you so much. Our next speaker is Diana Lopez from Colombia. Bienvenida. We are happy to have you here.
Hello, thank you very much. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. I don't know if I can share my screen. Let me see. Give me just a second. Okay, so I attended the course on November the previous year, and it was amazing because I learned so many things about how to include the climate change problem into different systems inside the school. So just let me do something here, and I will share my screen. There you go. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So I'm Diana Lopez. I work at a school here in Bogota, in Colombia. And after I attended the course, I learned so many things about how to include the climate change topic into different subjects. I'm a biologist, and as a biologist, I'm really interested in this topic. But as a teacher, I also really interested that my students can apply this topic into their lives, and they can be engaged into this topic and to solve this type of problems in their environment. So this problem solving system is just like focusing on the student as the center of the teaching system. I usually use the scientific method for them to observe, to analyze the problems, and then to propose a solution. But them being the center of the process, they need to explore their surroundings, they need to explore their environment, and they need to be engaged with these topics. So at the end, they can take action over the problems that they can identify along the way. So the guide that the course gave us was really important because it gave us the solution and how to engage the students in many different ways. So at the end, they could be more motivated to solve this type of problems. They can have more critical thinking. And of course, that inside the classroom, we have more meaningful learning experiences. So I proposed a challenge, which was to work in a type of ecosystem which is called the wetland. The wetland is a very important ecosystem here in Bogota. It has a lot of biodiversity, but it has been affected so much by human activities. And we have wetland really close from the school. So I chose this wetland, which is called La Conejera. And this wetland has been affected so much by human activities. So probably the traditional classroom will be like, hello students, these are the problematics, and try to do something about this, and step number 1, 2, 3. But with this methodology, I was able to propose something different, more based on the problem-based learning and the project-based learning, which is, okay, let's go there and let's find out what we can do about the topic. This is just a diagram about Bogota. All the blue spots that you can see here, those are wetlands. And the red dot over there is the school. So La Conejera is just next to the school. So it's really important for me, for the students, to know this ecosystem and to try to find a solution for the problematic that they find there. So who's going to be involved? More eight students, 13 to 15 years old. And I want to engage also the language teacher for like to communicate all these results that the students gathered along the way. So the first step, let's meet the problem. Like we need to go there, we need to have a field trip for them to see the problem, for them to state the relationships that they can see. One of the problems that I can see in many of the classes is that we always think that we have the knowledge and that they need to listen to us to gather that knowledge. And instead of that, they need to go there to explore, to engage with that ecosystem, to find the problematic. And they are going to have a really important task, and is to identify that problematic. So after they identify that problematic, they're going to state the wetland as the first or the most important factor that is going to be like the protagonist of everything. What is happening to that wetland? What can I see there? Did I see any animals? What is the most important thing of that ecosystem? And with all those answers inside the classroom, the idea is that they can act as the main actor in the problem solving of all the probably the activities that they found inside the wetlands. So they are going to place themselves as the possible person who can solve those problems inside that wetland. And also they're going to place the school as the person or as the institution who can solve also these problems. So at the end, they will be able to communicate all these findings to the school through articles, through some news, through the school network, with, of course, the language teacher, who also is going to help us to communicate this in a better way. So they are going to propose not only solutions, but also different scenarios in which they can see what is going to happen to that wetland, what is going to happen to the city, what is going to happen to us if we act right now, if we do something, and what is going to happen if we do not do anything about it. So everything is just to say that it will, like all these methodologies that we could include in the class, they will create a lot of public awareness, not only in the students, but also in the community, in the families, in the city. And it will enhance a lot of participation from different actors, including students and of course the school. And the most important thing is that they could be able to give some resolution to the environmental challenges and problems that they can live in their cities.
That sounds really exciting and fun. Like Victor said in the comments, this is an example of place-based learning, which is super important so people understand their own environment that they're living in and get to know it. And I really love that you also brought in the language teacher. So this interdisciplinary approach to teaching about not just biology, but also, you know, where do the names of these plants and animals come from? What's the root of it? It's very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. We have two more presenters, another teacher from Colombia and then a student from Illinois. So our next presenter is Leonardo Pizzon. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. And I'm really think that when you listen to your partners, you learn a lot. So I'm really enjoying to be here with you. And I'm going to present my strategy that I already present to the course of the climate action. So give me 1 second because I'm going to present my screen. Okay. So can you hear me clear? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I want to start talking about the strategy that I did for the course, and it's called eco-re-evolución. This is a word in Spanish, but means that as a kind of revolution. That's a word game. That means that it's a re-evolution, how we can rewrite a future and a sustainable future, eco-friendly, from the school. I have been teaching art during 12 years, for 10 years, in the Santa Francisca Romana School. So there in Bogota, Colombia, with the 9th graders. So the idea with this strategy is to identify different problems that we have in the school, in our daily life, and try to identify how can we solve that things we have in our daily life. So first of all, I want to introduce the school and something in general, that the school is engaged with the care of the planet. And we have different programs in the school, like with the ODS, and we have education for sustainability, that all the girls should pass for that system, and even the teachers and all the system in the school. So we have to be involved with the environmental strategies to be a good teacher in the school. So it's not only for the children, not only for the girls, it's for all the community. Okay, so okay, my objective or my skill, my goal, it's to identify the possible dangers that surrounds the daily life in the school from the social aspects and of course the natural resources. Understand the problems as opportunities for innovation and the creative thinking, taking a role, an active role, searching possible solutions. This is very important because sometimes when we identify the problems, we are complaining all the time with the problems. And if you can see, you can show to the girls how you can identify the opportunity, the problem as an opportunity to do something, to innovate, you change the perspective as well. Okay, so another goal here is to generate ideas. Using this structure is how can we, and who said what? Because sometimes when we are creating something, making something creative, we are stuck in, we put a limitation, a wall in our imagination. So we have to break those walls and go through the ideas. And who said no? Who said why? Why not? I mean, so the girls made a kind of brainstorm with the problems and the one that identify. Another one is to develop an holistic thinking around the daily life problems that has a that have an impact in the scholarship in an environmental level, and demonstrate behaviors of team working in a positive way. Because as is written here, it's different when you create a team and when you create a group. A team is when you have a specific roles. A group, it's a bunch of people going to the other point. So this is a picture for a team working here. This is a very nice and interesting methodology that the girls has to build a tower and put the marshmallow on the top. And this is a very creative and successful experiment for a team working. So as you can see, the girls are working here together with different roles. So I have some key concepts here, like environmental danger. Okay, what else? Sustainability. Okay, yes, basically those one. Now, as you can see here, the girls are working in possible sketches and solutions for the problems that they already identified. And the challenge, it's based on the question, how can we design a revolution, an environmental revolution in the school? How we can reuse waste materials that we have there? How we can use the water that we are wasting all the time in the bathrooms, and how we can take advantage from the rain. So this is the basic strategy we have here. And related to the title, rewrite the future and the present in the school. Okay, so about the systemic thinking, I try to do with the girls, and this is very useful if you want to use it. And this is a methodology for creative processes called archaeology creative. So here in this activity, you go to the best future. And if you are there in the best future, now you follow the steps you had to go to that future, and start making actions in those steps. So it's go to the from the end to the beginning in order to modify behaviors we are making in a wrong way in our daily life in the school, for example. And in this way, the girls are all the time creating, prototyping, making sketches trying to make visible their ideas. Okay, and finally, okay, our last step, but not least important, it's to apply the design thinking process in all the methodology and from the beginning till here in this point, because all the process is based in these 5 verbs. Sorry, I skipped the slide. Yes. And it's empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. So yes, so the girls should make this process and generate some links and talk to the people, with the teachers, with the parents, the people who are working in the school, trying to empathize and make an emotional link with the people. After that, define how can we do this? For example, how can I don't know, give a better life for the pets or the dogs that we have in the school, and so and give the possible solutions, sketching and define the specific problems. After that, it's the step to ideate. So they make a creative process, a brainstorm, sketching, making different prototypes using different materials, plastic, I mean, different materials there in the school. And finally, make an initial prototype, useful and practical prototype using different technological and artistic tools like 3D printers or a simple sketch in the art classroom using colors and markers. But the important point here is to show their ideas. And finally, they prove the prototypes in the real place, in the school with the teachers and the partners. And this is the way that she can help the environment and think about what we are doing in our place, our daily life places, and using art as a tool to do that. And I think it's all. I hope you like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonardo. Gracias. It's awesome to see how art is so applicable to all subject areas as well. Creativity is important for every subject area. Thank you so much for sharing. Our last presenter is Arushi Patar, who is a student from New Jersey. I'm sorry I said Illinois earlier. We met her through the Illinois Youth Climate Movement, so that's why I thought that. But we're really happy to have Arushi here to talk about her experience in high school, learning about climate change and having her perspective.
Yeah, thank you so much. And no worries about the New Jersey thing. I understand. Give me 1 second. Let me share my screen. I just do want to note that learning about different ways to integrate climate change activism in school is honestly so cool and interesting to me. 1 second, it's taking a moment. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, all right. So I put together this little presentation just on my perspective as a student on how to approach climate change education based on my experiences. So I just kind of want to introduce myself, take a moment here. I am a high school student, I'm a sophomore, and I'm also involved in a couple different movements. I'm the director of a content cohort at the Foreign Policy Youth Collaborative, which is basically a nonprofit, a for teens by teens nonprofit dedicated to bridging the gap between teenagers and the in international politics, foreign policy, and international issues like the climate movement. I'm also part of the research team and partner of Climate Cardinals, which is an organization dedicated to education, because so much climate information is in English. And so this is the translation. This focuses on translation of climate documents and climate information into other languages to increase accessibility of climate information. And then finally, I'm part of the EcoCircle International fellow. I'm a fellow of EcoCircle International. And it's taught me an incredible amount about the climate. I'll get into that later. Yeah. So I kind of want to start off by just reiterating the point that we all know that climate action is absolutely essential. And I personally strongly believe, based on my experience, that education has been the most vital step for me. And I'll explain how it's impacted me in my life. But I just think that it's so important starting off in order to unite the world, in order to make substantial climate change mitigation effort, like to unite the world for that cause of mitigation, of prevention. We must educate as many people as possible, because universal education will lead to climate action. And so that's why I strongly believe that education is so important, and it has been in my life. And I think a lot of students agree that the integration of climate information in education is really impactful on their view on the climate movement. But I do want to note that there are many different ways to approach climate information education, and I think there's so many ways to approach it. And I would just like to talk about my experience to hopefully make an effective presentation on that. So I kind of want to start off also by just talking about what introduced me to climate change. And I want to mention something that I think a lot of students end up believing too. So I was born in New Jersey. I've lived in New Jersey for a while, and I over here live in a bit of a bubble. I can't see, at least like when I go outside, I can't see the impacts of climate change. But when I go to India with my family, I can see so much air pollution. And I really felt when I first went, I really felt like there was so much that I couldn't do, and that I really didn't have any sort of voice or any way to tackle this. I thought it was unfair that I had the privilege of living in a place like this without visible climate change impacts, because I wasn't aware of them. I wasn't. And seeing people in developing countries who did, and I really wanted to fix this problem, but I did not know how. And this is, I think a lot of students kind of hit this wall, because the way that information is given to us about the climate movement, students that have the privilege of being educated about it typically are educated in a way where it's kind of like something like that's passive, something that we hear about, but we don't actually know about, but we don't actually actively try to fix. And so I think that's where I really hit a wall. And I was talking to my friend, and she said that the reason that she really hit this wall was because she felt like nobody was listening. It doesn't feel like anyone's listening anyway. She felt like there was nothing that she could do in order to work towards mitigation. There was no way that she can make a substantial impact. And this was really this stuck with me for a very long time. I think this was really the driving force to why I decided to join different organizations and try to get my voice heard as much as possible, to begin writing, to begin putting out all the information that I can, and helping people as much as I possibly could get access to information on the climate movement, which is really important to me now. Because there was this one specific example. I had a really great science teacher in 6th grade, and I think this is why education to me is so important, because my science teacher introduced me to it was an invention challenge by National Geographic and Spark Lab, and it was basically the premise of it was every year you have to invent something for something. And 2017, that year, I had to create an invention to help with climate change prevention. And this was so new to me because I'd only ever heard about it. I'd only ever heard like, oh, climate change is an issue, and there are people suffering, and so much is wrong with. There's so much to fix, but I never actively tried to work towards prevention. And creating an invention here really changed the way that I view things. And I think having interactive lessons like this and putting effort into making interactive and positive climate change education forms, I just think that's so important. That really encouraged me to start in activism and to start getting my voice heard. I want to talk about something that, again, I also think a lot of students here and a lot of teachers that have briefly mentioned the climate movement but haven't integrated it into any of their education often believe. it's what I call the us in the future narrative, because students, kids, children, we all think that there are serious problems, but we don't know how to fix them because nobody's listening and we don't feel like we have a voice. So we think that the adults, the scientists, are going to solve this problem, but the scientists are saying that the children are going to solve the problem. And it's this continuous cycle of thinking, of separating yourself from the issue of climate change, of saying this is something that's going to like impact us so much in the future. This is going to be a huge problem in the future. That kind of separates our own involvement. I think being there, viewing, like seeing the impacts of climate change, being able to understand that this is now, that this future is actually right now, that this is impacting so many people, so many ecosystems, is so important. And the best way to be able to kind of internalize that important message in order to go into activism and environmentalism is through education. So, and I know we're kind of running out of time, but I do want to say just how should we approach environmental education is something that I think a lot of people have trouble with because there's so many different ways, but I think integrating it, and I just want to comment that how much, like, I think that the Climate Action Academy's like influence on integrating, I know Dan had a presentation on integration in math problems, which was so interesting to me, just because I think having, and also being there, visiting places, I just think everything was so interesting. Seeing how if you have this kind of exposure to the climate crisis, then you really understand it. And then you can kind of learn how it's something that's part of all of our lives. It's not an us thing. It's not a them thing. It's right here. It's right now. And it's something that we all need to address. And so I think integrating environmental education in everything as much as possible is so important in creating a generation of activists, of environmentalists, and of future leaders. So I know I'm running short on time, so that's really where I want to end it. That's all I have. But yeah, thank you so much. That's really it. But yeah, I hope this was effective in kind of sharing my perspective.
Thank you, Arushi. It's super important to hear your story, and thank you for articulating that and your perspective, because every generation has had a different experience with learning about climate change, from people in the 80s and 90s who heard about it from only a scientific perspective, a very abstract way, that we've learned as well from having dialogues with scientists. And it's so important for us to realize now that it's happening now, that it is on all of us to change, and especially those of us with privilege and living in the US as a big emitting country. So just thank you so much. Just to round off this talk, this expo, it's been really great to hear from teachers. We love teachers. We thank you so much for the work that you're doing for our future. And I know Gabriella shared in the chat the link to the books. So I'll just quickly share my screen with you to show how you can download them on the 2011 website. So both the Spanish and English versions are here at this link. And all you have to do is put in your email and you'll be sent the PDF. So this one here is the version in Spanish, and the one below is in English. And feel free to share this with anyone. And the next cohort of the Climate Action Academy starts in March. So feel free to sign up. And for those who are from Colombia, the next version in Spanish starts in April. So thank you again for being here. We'll stick around for a few minutes in case anybody wants to stay on and ask us questions. Thanks again to our presenters, and everyone have a great night.